Welcome to the Maximize Business Value Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their business on their terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Now here's your host, CEO of Mastery Partners, Tom Bronson.
Hi, this is Tom Bronson, and welcome to Maximize Business Value, a podcast for business leaders who are passionate about building long-term sustainable value in their businesses. In this episode, I'd like to welcome our guest, Jim Brewer. He's principal at Brewer Leadership, which is a consulting practice that helps business leaders thrive by coaching the principles of accountability toward tangible goals, alignment around values, and corporate culture enhancement. Jim is a Vistage chair and is also an implementation coach for EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I've known Jim for several years. He's been a speaker at our Value 90X Lunch and Learn series, and I've been wanting to get him on this podcast since we started. So welcome to Maximize Business Value, Jim. Tell us about Brewer Leadership and why you started that practice.
I will, Tom. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and some of your listeners. So I've got a few gray hairs, Tom, and
I have none, by the way.
And so my career was in a really fertile ground for learning and innovation. I spent most of my career in the technology sector, and then the latter part of my career, I ended up with an old friend of mine acting as his vice president of sales. And that company, we started at about $20 million in 2005. And when we sold it to a publicly held company, we were Inc. number one. The company had grown to $1.3 billion. And the only reason I bring that story up is both of those experiences taught me a lot. We never would have gotten to where we got at Member Health, the Inc. number 9 and Inc. number 1, if we hadn't employed some frameworks and techniques. And so that floats my boat. I get a chance to work with other entrepreneurs and walk alongside as they pursue that journey. So that's why I do what I do.
So what year was it that you sold that business?
The company actually sold in 2008. So we were Inc. Number 9 in 2006 and Inc. number 1 in 2007. It was awarded in 2008.
Holy cow! I've had a business on the Inc. 5000 list 4 times, but I never made it to number 1. The highest I got was number 1946. I was told that that's how you should say that. So, because when you say 19, people go, oh, and I said 46. So that is quite the accomplishment because there's a lot of businesses out there. And I think that was before Gino Wickman had even written the book Traction. So Jim and I have known, I'm right? He wrote it in 12. So Jim and I have known one another for a number of years. And the first time that we met for coffee some time ago, Jim brought me a copy of Gino Wickman's book, Traction, the basis for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. So I'd already listened to the book on Audible, but was thrilled to get a hard copy because, frankly, I think it is simply brilliant. Every business owner on the planet should at least read it, if not read it, and then implement it. So I wish that I'd read it years ago. In fact, many of my clients at Mastery Partners use EOS to build long-term sustainable value in their businesses, which is what this podcast is all about. So, Jim, tell us what EOS is, maybe kind of the major components and how it works.
I'm more than glad to, Tom. First of all, there are EOS asserts that there are 6 major components, skills, areas that an entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial team need to master in order to take their business to the next level. The first of those items is vision. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to answer a few basic questions about how your business occurs and how you want your business to occur. Those questions are, what are the values of the people inside the business? What's the values of the business itself? What's that what Jim Collins called the hedgehog concept for your business? What's the niche that you participate in? What's your marketing strategy in order to pursue that? So all of those things make up the vision for the company. But vision alone isn't enough. So you have to have great people as well as having a great vision. And those EOS, again, asserts a couple of principles around people. You have to have the right people, and they have to be in the right seats. The next major component is data. Tom, as you know, companies are unsuccessful or unsustainable if they run their business on emotion. You have to run your business on data. And which means you need scorecards, which means you need to set very specific quarterly goals inside the business. The next major component that comes up with that is process. So every company has some basic processes, HR processes, financial processes, onboarding customers, sales, and marketing processes. And it's important to document those, but document them in a really specific way where you document about 20% of the process and get 80% of the coverage there. As you know, if you go through and try and document it 100%, you'll spend your life documenting, right? So that's not what we're saying. But we're saying that process is really important. The next thing is issues. If you're up to big things with great people running your business on data, you're going to have some issues that come up. How you handle those on a day-to-day basis will have a dramatic impact on your business and your ultimate success. And then finally, they end with, surprisingly, Gino ends with traction. And traction is the ability to really set quarterly goals and keep the management team on place. We are prescriptive enough that we go through exactly how to run the weekly meeting, what that agenda looks like, how you marshal the brain power of your leadership team around that table to solve the issues that are important that week. So that's EOS in a nutshell.
Well, that sounds complicated. And I think that in the implementation of it can be, but it is so well spelled out in the book, and they, of course, at EOSworldwide.com provide tools and things like that. So, but it's been all the rage. I mean, it's a very popular book. It's a New York Times bestseller. I'm confident, although I didn't look that up. before this. But I recommend to all of our clients that they get a copy of the book and that they read it. And of course, many business owners will get a copy of the book and read it and then decide, well, this isn't that hard, because once the things that you're talking about are so very important to running a great business. But this kind of brings it down and breaks it into bite-sized chunks. And so a lot of business owners say, well, I've read the book, so I can go out and self-implement it. How hard is it to implement kind of the strategies in EOS if you're doing it on your own?
Tom, it is not unlike what you do at Mastery Partners, helping organizations prepare for that ultimate event. There's things that you can see from the outside that are really difficult to see when you're on the inside. So really, I play three roles there that help people, and certainly people self-implement. I actually help people correct after they've made some basic mistakes that everybody makes when they self-implement. But when I'm implementing EOS, I really do three things. I act as a teacher, because this is not my first rodeo, because I've taken a number of clients through the process from a number of different industries. So I know these principles inside and out, so I teach them. The second role that I play is a facilitator, because part of the magic of what happens at EOS, a lot of the work that you do too, I suspect, the magic is in the leadership team already, and you have to facilitate and get it out. Coming in as an outside player gives you an opportunity in order to do that. And finally, I act as a coach, because whether it's your golf swing or running your business, you've got some flaws that you can't see. But when you're looking from the outside, they're quite obvious. So how to present them, how to work with them, how to reveal them to the leader is, again, part of what I do.
So of the assistance that you provide to companies, what percentage of those started by self-implementing and then called you in later to help with a professional facilitation?
Really, a small number have started self-implementing, and then I come in. I think I've had two clients in my history where I have done that. Most of the clients, as they begin this, as they read that book, Traction, recognize that having an expert come in from the outside in order to help them facilitate through the process is what they do. So that's a vast majority of my clients.
Well, I've had several clients talk about it and say, well, gosh, I've read the book and I think that I could go out and do this. But, my advice to them is, look, you can go do it. And if you go to the website, you can see that there's probably thousands of companies that are attempting self-implementation, but nothing works like having a professional who understands it to be in front of you and to guide you through that process. Because really, Traction it's a system, right? It's a process, and it helps you extract good information. It helps you to be able to use that information to better your business. And my quick story on that is, I've got one client who did a self-implementation and did it fairly well for about 3 years, but then finally decided, you know what, we're kind of losing our steam. And then they called in an implementation specialist. And I had dinner with the CEO this past weekend, and I said, so how's it going? You're 6 months into professional implementation, even after you'd self-implemented for 3 years. He said, I wish I'd done this from the beginning. I wish that I'd gone that route. And I'm really amazed at the progress that we're making and the things that we were just kind of overlooking in the self-implementation. So I'm a big fan of doing that. So we're talking with Jim Brewer about the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Mastery Partners equips business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their own terms using our 4-step process. We start with a snapshot of where your business is today. Then, we help you understand where you want to be and design a custom strategy to get you there. Next, You execute that strategy with the help of our amazing resource network. And ultimately, we help you transition your business on your terms. What are you waiting for? More time? More revenue? If you want to maximize your business value, it takes time. Now is the time. Get started today by checking us out at masterypartners.com or email us at info@masterypartners.com to learn more.
We're back with Jim Brewer, and we're talking about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, introduced by Gino Wickman in his book, Traction. Jim, you've already given us a brief overview of the system. Are there any size limits to who could implement EOS?
Not really, Tom, but let me talk about suitability for just a second. This is establishing a process and a framework for a solo entrepreneur, for somebody that's maybe, less than 10 or 15 employees. It's a lot of overhead for a more simplified journey. I would suggest that it is a great fit for organizations anywhere from 20 to maybe 350 or 400 employees. On the upper side, the principles all still work, but the level of customization in order to look at their culture starts varying pretty dramatically. So I would suggest that there's probably an upper limit for the model as it's normally used.
Okay, but now I've heard anecdotally of larger businesses with thousands of employees who might implement this in a piece of their organization, in a division or in a branch or something like that. Does that work as well?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Whenever you can define the goal and objective to be specifically enough to look at it as a single vision, maybe with more than one product, but all under a single vision umbrella, then I think the principles really work well. And the other limiting factor I would suggest is the size of the senior leadership team. Typically, you're always going to have at least 3 major components to every business: sales and marketing, finance and operations. Sometimes those break up into subcategories. I think that senior leadership team is important. It's I think generally if senior leadership teams get more than a dozen, it gets pretty difficult to manage the business.
Okay. Well, you mentioned it's kind of a high overhead. Of course, at Mastery Partners, we're kind of under the lower limit. However, we don't completely implement Traction, but we use the basics of it. Some of the stuff that we've learned by reading the book and interacting with folks such as yourself. So we set quarterly rocks. We know how to manage those. We typically have level 10 meetings, but some of the other stuff, the people stuff and the components, we're just not broad enough to be able to do that. But the principles contained in the book are really good, even for, I think, solo entrepreneurs who sometimes tend to get distracted by other things, and they forget how to focus on what's important. Identifying those quarterly rocks really puts in front of you the things that you have to implement. I get really testy if a quarterly rock has to roll into the next quarter. It's because
Yep.
These are the things you're identifying. What is the important thing? Many entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial businesses get caught up in the day-to-day, and they're not focused on those big things that can really move the business down the path. And EOS gives a framework to be able to do that. I should be a commercial agent for.
I think you are.
So of course, this podcast is being recorded as businesses are just starting to reopen after the COVID-19 shutdown. Jim, what are some things that business owners can do with EOS as they're starting to come back to work?
Oh, good, great question. And certainly the organizations that have been challenged by this have all of our sympathies. But there's been some good that has really come out of the process. So we've learned how to work remotely. We've learned certain skills, and it'll vary company by company in order to deal with these extraordinary times that we've been dealing with. I think that the real value is taking those lessons learned, in the crucible of what we're going through right now. And really, how can I use those to change the way I do business forever?
Boy, that I have to soak that in for just a second. Yeah. So things, yes. You said that there are some good things that are happening, and I just had this conversation yesterday. I mean, companies are starting to realize that they can operate virtually, right? They're starting to realize that they can get work done in a different way. And so how do you capitalize on that? And EOS can help you navigate those things. Of course, this wouldn't be the Maximize Business Value podcast if we didn't really talk about what you think is the one thing. What is the one most important thing a business owner can do to build long-term value in his business?
Well, surprisingly, and I know you believe this as well, Tom, because it's been one of our conversations over a cup of coffee or a glass of beer. You have to get yourself, your personality out of your business in order to be able to sell it. You really have to develop the leadership team to have the company really have inherent value for the purchaser of the business. As long as it is just you, as long as it is all command and control, as long as it is the magic of the moment and not a process and a series of repeatable processes, you'll never get the value for your business that you could otherwise.
Boy, that couldn't be said any better. Frankly, as I tell our prospective clients when I go meet with them, if the business is dependent on the owner of the business to operate, it's worth almost zero. If it requires the business owner to operate in the business, that means that the business owner has to stay if a transition happens. And what happens if something happens to the business owner? So that is great advice. And of course, you can use the traction framework to start building those processes and building the team and offloading those things to where they really belong in the business. That is great advice. I'm afraid I'm going to hit you with a question that I didn't tell you before, but our listeners to the Maximize Business Value podcast know that we always ask a bonus question, and that is, what personality trait has gotten you into the most trouble through the years?
Oh, Tom Bronson. So I spent my career, Tom, in sales and what's now called business development. And so there was an illusion that I held for too damn long. And that was that sales made the business work, right? Without customers, we're nothing. Now, there's some fundamental truth in that. But if you look at a company and say sales is strong, but operations or finance is weak, what happens to the ultimate value of that company, right? I would suggest they certainly will not thrive. They certainly won't get the multiple when they get to whatever their ultimate event turns out to be. And in the same way, if sales is weak and operations and finance are strong, you've got a great company looking for something to do. So it takes all three. But I used to believe that sales was perhaps even more important than it really is.
All right, that is an acceptable answer. I was there for a second. I thought you were dodging me. So, Jim, how can our listeners and viewers get in touch with you?
Really two ways, but certainly by email. But I really encourage folks to look at my website, which is brewerleadership.com. There we talk about the value of peer groups and what we do with the Vistage practice. I talk about the EOS process. I talk about some private consulting and special project work that we do. There on that website, we also have, once we get to know potential clients, we have a group of trusted advisors, like our friends at Mastery Partners, where we participate in, where there's an ecosystem of people that we trust that can bring tools and solutions to specific problems.
So the best way is right there on your website. They can
right there on the website. Email and everything is there on the contact. The important thing is reach out. Let's have at least a 10 or 15 minute call and get to know one another. It's important to be honest. I'll tell you if I can help, and I'll tell you if I can't.
And as I found out this week, if you go to Jim's website, you can actually schedule a meeting right there with him at a time that is convenient for you. So thank you, Jim, for being our guest. You can find Jim at his website, which is brewerleadership.com. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can reach out to us here at Maximize Business Value Podcast, and we will be happy to put you in contact with Jim. In our blog post this week, you'll get a link to Jim's website, as well as a link to the book Traction. It is a must-read. Let me say that again. It is a must-read for any business owner who wants to maximize their business value. This is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners on how to build long-term sustainable value in your business, even during challenging times like these. So be sure to tune in each week and follow us wherever you found this podcast. And be sure to comment. We love comments and we respond to all of them. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to use EOS while you maximize business value.
Thank you for tuning in to the Maximize Business Value podcast with Tom Bronson. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their own terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Learn more on how to build long-term, sustainable business value and get free value-building tools by visiting our website, www.masterypartners.com. That's mastery with a Y, masterypartners.com. Check it out.
That was perfect. I wouldn't make any changes on that.